Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. So I did an episode that I lost. I lost the video, and I'm not quite sure how that ever happens. It was probably a mistake on my part of not labeling the video after importing it because it gets a real generic name. I thought I might redo that one today, but I'm not feeling that one today. I think it's time we get back into dreams because I've been having my typical dreams, which are just so elaborate. I mean, I don't know what to tell you guys. It is living another reality at night, which isn't obviously this reality in terms of its sensory input. But I've noticed a few things, at least about my dreams, and I would love to get your knowledge on this. And for those of you that dream like me, or you dream every single night, there's just not a night you don't dream. I don't even remember a night that I haven't dreamed. I don't know if that's ever occurred. Even if it's just a teeny one or it's a frustration one, it's going in a loop and it's frustrating, meaning it has no real context, there's no people in it, it's still a dream. But that's really rare. And I don't know what I'm going to call this. We'll see where it goes. The interesting thing is that I do review my dreams after I wake up. In my own head, I say, well, what am I learning about dreams, The episode on the ancient mind really affected one of my perspectives of dreams that I mentioned in the episode, which has to do with the fact that dreams they have an interesting proportional distribution of what you're actually experiencing in contrast to this reality. What do I mean? I feel like dreams are overwhelmingly an emotional experience. Whereas in this world, it's very easy to get into a mechanical, functional loop and not have an emotion that is really discerning to your brain, right? So you're having an emotion, but it's almost like a secondary thing that's going on, and you can pretty much ignore it as much as you want. I'll give you an example. You go to work and you're tippity typing on a keyboard all day to process people into forms or whatever, or you're building something and you just need to kind of zone out. You need to just go, I'm building a house, I am doing something. And you're paying attention to the accuracy, so you're much more left-brained pretty much during your work hours. You come home and you go for your vices. Because we get hungry at least twice a day. That's one of your little vices. Typically, you don't want to eat food you don't like, and so you get into an emotional spin with that. But it's very short-lived. You're in and out of that emotion. Oh, there's the food I like. Yum, yum, yum. Oh, that tastes great. Okay, now I'm going to go home and I feel good. Boom, boom, boom. And it's sort of a lowbrow spectrum of what we could be feeling as compared to more incredible events like, I just met the most amazing person in the world. I just got the job of my dreams. I got the call. It's my break in Hollywood, or whatever it is, right? Those are your super emotional highs. What I have discovered in dreams is that as all the action is occurring, I'm at, let's just say for the sake of guessing, having about a 60% emotional experience and a 40% mechanical experience. It makes sense. I'm not in this world. I am not really with my body as much as I feel like I'm with my body. We talk about this a lot, right? You don't really have any arms or legs. If you do happen to see your arms in your dream or your legs. I've had my legs in a dream once when I was in third grade. I dreamed I was at grade school, which was out in the country, and got a hair, rogue hair here, and there was a lion in the room with me, and he was pretty peacefully sitting there. It was a full-grown male lion with a big mane, and he reached up and took a chunk out of my leg, and I immediately woke up. And I don't know if I actually felt it. There was no blood or anything like that. I was in third grade, plus I hadn't watched a bunch of gory movies at that point. My hands, I've got tons of dreams with clapping applause, writing down a phone number. But man, unless there is something that's very specific to my limbs, I don't remember seeing my legs in a dream for, well, pretty much since third grade. I don't have a memory of that. I do have, obviously, I'm walking around a lot. I'm operating a car, but I'm not really seeing my legs. These things are just occurring because my mind is willing it to happen because that's the scenario. Get in a car, drive car. But I never remember hitting a gas pedal, a brake pedal. I don't remember putting a car in drive or anything like that. I just get in the car. I do remember holding a steering wheel, I think, for sure, several times. But the other one that's the new epiphany for this episode, I don't think it's strong enough to make an entire episode because I'm just going to tell you and you can go look at your dreams. My goal of making these episodes, besides just entertaining you guys with discussion, is I really would love for those of you who are chronic dreamers to take this information and see if this applies to your experiences as well. Because if you're having completely different experiences, that's major information to me. I need to interview my father because he recently watched the episode with that stick I smoked. He's going to be seeing a new one. And I mentioned something about dreams, and he texted me back and he goes, you're just like me. I have dreams every single night and they're amazing. And I remember my entire lifetime, even when I was a kid, I don't remember, I was about 8 to 10, somewhere in there. My father was walking in the room. I don't know what spawned the conversation, but he goes, they say you don't dream in color, which I've never heard anyone say that before or since. And he goes, but I dream in full Technicolor. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do too. I just never knew that anyone ever had that insinuation that you don't. And what's interesting is some of those senses aren't important in dreams. That's the other really interesting thing. Well, do you dream in color? Well, just have a dream and see if you dream in color. Like off the bat, the one I'm thinking of right now is I feel like I was in India or something, and I was in this little sort of makeshift home. It was made of cement, but it had a beautiful opening to the ocean and a big, probably about, I'd say 15-foot wave of really gentle water went over the house, and the roof was open. It was like this courtyard sort of thing. But the weather was like perfect in my dream. It was like a summer evening. It was nice. The sun was still out. It's probably like if you're in the summer solstice where, depending on where you are in the world, the sun can go down in the 9 o'clock region. This would have been about 7 or 8 o'clock. So really nice, But I remember looking at that wave and it was just as blue as, the cleanest water. And so that's the one I remember off the top of my head with that. But the one thing I've discovered is that, and I think this yearns back to the mechanism that's causing these dreams, is that I don't stay stationary for long in a dream. I'm always moving through a dream. I had a dream the other day that really shook this into my head, and I was realizing that wherever I am, I'm always on the move. It's the strangest thing. Again, my dreams, they're always structures. There's homes, skyscrapers, concert halls, theaters, quaint little homes. And I'm always moving around because it's almost like my brain is almost lucid. It's looking at this experience going, get it, baby, get it. Because as soon as you wake up, you'll never see this world again, perhaps. Outside of, again, those few places that I dream regularly, I guess, it probably takes a decade to rotate through all of the places that I know I've been through several times. I wish I had the time to render some of these places in Blender and show you my dreams, The one I thought about trying to model was the Art Deco theater, where what's funny about it is I have a feeling it's a movie theater, but it's like 1930s, sort of mid-century atomic era building. And I'm outside the building initially, and it's really big. It's like a big sort of soundstagey kind of size building, but it's got this just beautiful, like deep green, maybe like even a washed out green, kind of 50s diner looking Art Deco-y kind of thing. And I go inside and there's a gigantic escalator. I just mentioned this, and I go up the escalator, and the escalator actually turns the corner and goes up without losing its mechanical connection. I mean, you don't walk off into a blank area and then get on a different one, which that for me blows me. But here's the funny thing. Even though I'm pretty sure getting to that top floor, which must be 3 stories up, because the first escalator is at least 2 stories, I don't remember going into a movie theater at that location. The dream kind of ends at that point, but I'm in such architectural heaven seeing this location. That's really what it's about for me. But it is true, I don't hold still much. Now, I do have a couple moments where I have paused in a dream, and it's always with a goal in mind to stop. It's usually spawned by someone else. Usually, there's one where it isn't that way. The 2 that come to mind, just so you can kind of compare notes, is when a family. This is when I learned I didn't have hands. Really, it's a dream I talked about in the past where I was with this family, nuclear family, man, boy, girl, mom, dad. And it's an art studio inside this home, but it is bitchin', man. Big old island with all kinds of supplies on it. The outside of the room walls were all storage, open face storage containers with everything you want, paper and paint and whatever, pens. It was just beautiful. And we were messing around together in this room, which sort of was a backstory. Like I entered this phase of the dream and it was like, we've had a good time. I don't remember having the good time, but I really felt good. Again, 60% emotion, 40% execution. It might even be higher in the emotional realm. But they said, let's get your phone number so we can call you. Well, let's do this again. I was like, yeah. And I got a pin and the whole family's around me and I'm trying to write my phone number. And when I bumped into that comedian that's got cerebral palsy. I forget his name off the top of my head here. He's really famous right now, but the weird thing is most of his bits on YouTube are about 10 years old. But he's one of the funniest guys in the world. He talked about when he's at a club, and if a girl asked him for his phone number before he got married, he said, oh, you want my number? And he can't control his hands that well, right? And one of his hands is one of those turned hands. He's got a lot of funny jokes about that. He's got some brilliant jokes about this. I'll put his image up on the video so you guys can see his stuff. But he talks about how he goes, okay, let me get some sheets of paper. And what his joke is that he can't control his hands enough, so every number he's writing is huge because that's the only way he can write on a piece of paper. He can't drive, and so he talks about all his disabilities, and he's just a brilliant guy. But he goes, okay, he goes 13 hours later, I'm like, here's my phone number. And he goes, don't mix them up. Because they're all in the order of his phone number. Anyway, that's sort of what it felt like. My hands were spaghetti. I couldn't control them. And that's when I had that huge epiphany that I don't really control my hands. But the most recent one is just realizing that I'm always moving. And I don't quite understand that. Other than the dream machine inside my brain is constantly refreshing incoming data and translating that into a dream. So now, what I want to suggest here, and I always like to get at the mechanism of what dreams are, because if you have a decent dream, it's sort of heavenly. Nothing's bad. No matter how bad things get, they resolve themselves, even if you have that. There's 2 dreams that I think men have, and women, ladies, if you could please let me know if you have something of this similar caliber. There's one I think you guys have with us. It's just a human thing. I don't mean to be exclusive. We're not gifting you it. We're all having it because we're humans. But the one is that you walk into a room or you materialize in a room and you're naked and you get embarrassed. And this is typically a dream you have when you're younger, because as you get older, you could care less if anybody sees you naked. You just don't care. But my explanation in previous episodes, for those who haven't seen any of those episodes, if you dig dream analysis, we've got a good playlist. I apologize to those of you on BitChute because there's no real easy way to create playlists. There are, but they start interfering with you viewing the channel, and I just gave up on that whole process. But I think that you're materializing your body, and then you materialize your clothes on your body if you care about such a thing. I don't think you care about your body much, which is why this doesn't happen that often. But I think as we're younger and you grow up with just almost an innate concept of privacy for your nakedness. We got the old Eve, Garden of Eden sin in our brain, or whatever the hell the thing is. You metabolize your body first in the dream because you care. You're making it because you care. But then you haven't put the clothes on yet because you don't normally you don't make your body happen that often where you think it's visible. It's not a conscious thought in a dream. You can see me, right? Well, whatever. I don't remember any fashion in my dreams. Not once do I remember I got my leather jacket on. I got this, I got shorts on. Nope. But then someone sees you before you put your clothes on in the dream because you're making everything happen. You're the engineer in this art of dreams, somehow capable of rendering everything in perfect 3D. It's amazing. Dreams are fascinating things for me. So that's one, the naked dream. It's been dramatized in tons of sitcoms. Star Trek did one. But the second one that men have, I know, never heard this from a woman, but I'm sure it happens, is you arrive at a location in your car. You park it in a parking space. You go inside a building or a house, something. You have a conversation. Then you come back out to your car and it's missing. Why? Because just like a video game, you're throwing away the level that you wrote just a second ago to like free up memory or something. It's kind of what it is. And so you don't fully reconstruct your car. What's interesting about this phenomenon, just like naked dreams, where I don't have that anymore. If I thought I was naked, I'd be like, hey, you gonna borrow a pair of pants? Whatever. I wouldn't care. I no longer have that weird fear that my car's going to disappear. In this world, it's like, okay, I'll call the insurance company and pay $1,000 and I'll get all the money back for the car's value. And if it gets captured, then I'll get money out of the person who stole it or whatever. I just don't care, But let's go over to a drug called LSD. And just as a small digression about LSD, I've taken it 3 times. It is not something you would ever be able to abuse, in my opinion. I have heard people microdose the stuff. Then I heard it's almost impossible to get real stuff anymore. It's such an amazing experience, but it comes with a lot of requirements. And this is all going to factor back into dream production, in my opinion. Or it might. My buddy, who had taken thousands of trips in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, he met me in 2006, and it wasn't till probably, 2016 or something that 10 years later, that he kept telling me, he goes, look, we gotta go on a trip. We gotta become mud brothers. And I said, I'm in, man. And he goes, I gotta make sure that you don't have any like weird anxieties, that you don't have any weird skeletons in your closet. Because as soon as you go on this drug, he says, all those barriers that you use to hold back all that secret stuff about yourself, they're going to come down 100%. Whatever you are inside, that's your trip. And over 10 years and tons of experiences, he finally decided, okay, I'm going to get some of this stuff and we're going to take it. And he was 100% right. Now, he had taken tons of mushrooms as well, which again, I haven't been able to get a mushroom to do much at all. I've eaten damn near a pint of mushrooms all at once. I've got some recent advice about how to take that if I ever find any more. They're rumoring to make that legal in California. But so I asked him, I said, okay, what's the difference between mushrooms and acid? He said, mushrooms just do what they do no matter what. If you're going to have an hallucination, you're going to have that. Most of the time, it's just a really peaceful feeling. You get very existential with your brain, which is something that, at least in LSD, I can claim that you get to have that memory for the rest of your life. I have no experience having anything with mushrooms, of course. But here's the way I always describe LSD trips. If you were to smoke the most amazing sativa weed, which I've done, and you get these pretty amazing epiphanies. I've done sketches and designs and, man, just some amazing stuff. Unless I write it down, all those great ideas vanish like a dream when you wake up. You get them for a few seconds and then they're gone. So that sucks because you'll have some really good ideas. LSD, what you see is what you get to keep. If I had you come to Los Angeles and I take you to MoCA, some interesting art gallery or some experience, you want to see all the homeless people on Hollywood Boulevard dressed like Superman, you're going to remember that when you go home. Someone's going to say, well, what was your trip like? And oh my God, he took me to this place. And I saw this wild painting and da-da-da-da. And you're going to remember it 100% to the best of your ability, just like a real experience. And LSD, for me, gives me experiences that I remember 1,000%. It's bizarre. I can still just close my eyes and see the artwork that I saw. And your first trip is always your most amazing trip. The regimen I had, again, to complete the digression, is I took it. It took me about an hour to feel anything crawling up my back. It was like this warm liquid crawling up my back. And then I started to see kind of all the patterns in the room kind of jiggle. It wasn't a hallucination. It's just the way that it interferes with the way you process your visual data. But my buddy goes, okay, lie down on the sofa. He's in another room doing other things. And he goes, lie down and close your eyes. He goes, you're going to see amazing things. And sure enough, I closed my eyes, and man, if I could have stayed on that sofa all day, I would have. It was just, again, I saw this graffiti and wild artwork, and man, it was just fun. I drew it all. I was able to draw it a week later to give you a perspective of how much of an imprint this was. But the main thing he told me was that he goes, everything that's happening around you is getting involved with what you see. And he's playing beautiful music in the other room. And I just gave this story the other day, so I apologize for the repeat. But he's playing a bunch of beautiful kind of new age stuff, and it's just controlling what I'm seeing. It's so amazing. And then some gangster rap came on, and oh my God, what I was seeing just turned into like evil. And he runs in the office, and he goes, oh, sorry, man. He kicks it back to the other track. And everything cleaned up. So the mechanism is, he said, if a motorcycle drives by the house and it's blasting its pipes, that will interfere with what you see. He goes, that's why a lot of people like to do it in nature, surrounded by trees, and it's just peaceful, and then you really get a good glimpse of God's soul in those experiences. But it also creates amazing connections for you, which I had two people explain that to me before I took it. And it was like they said, everything that you think will connect together, like that show Connections. And you'll see correlations that are just absolutely beautiful. And so when I took it, major connections. And I took the second dose in this house. I took 6 tabs all by myself, and it was amazing. Still about 45 minutes to start, but man, I just sat here and meditated, man. I didn't have the show, of course. I recorded a ton of audio of me talking. And the second trip, I took a bunch of video, but I weighed about 20 pounds more, so you'll never see that video. I did think about crawling through some of the audio and trying to gift you guys with some of that analysis, but I have to listen to it and see what it says. But they're absolutely correct. You make these huge connections. Now, go back to dreams. Why are we always moving? Why are dreams so nebulous in their form? You can spend some time in a room, and if like I've had several dreams where I'm in an amphitheater, either anticipating a movie about to play, or I've had Joan Rivers perform in my dreams. I've had Prince dreams, several of them where he and I are like buddies, and I'm helping setting up the stage. I'm at his house and all this other stuff. But the second I turn around and look one way and concentrate and have an experience that way, and then I turn around and look at the other way, and then I turn back, that other room has reconfigured a little bit, if not completely changed. And your mind doesn't seem to care. That's what the weird thing is. All the discerning circuits in your mind that would say, oh my God, what's going on with reality, you don't care in a dream, do you? You don't freak out if the room changes. But the people who teach you how to dream lucidly, that's their mechanism. They say, build up a habit while you're awake to read a phone number, look away, and then, read anything, to be honest. And look away and look back. Obviously, in this reality, it'll be the same. Pull that trick in a dream, it will change right in front of you, and the more that you have this habit, you'll notice and you'll go into lucid mode. So imagine I'm sleeping, and when I do this episode, I try to cancel out all the ambient sounds that are just annoying to the soundtrack, but you'll hear cars drive by. When I do during the day, birds will whistle, and you just hear sounds. Well, if I was tripping on LSD, all those sounds would influence my feeling, my connections. If I was laying down trying to see things, which, by the way, on my second trip, I tried to lay down and see that stuff again, nothing. So again, your first trip, you want to covet it because it is very unique. And that's exactly what I was told would happen, and that's exactly what happened. I took my third trip with my buddy at his house again. We recreated everything. And it was very subtle, but it was a very powerful dose. It hit us in 30 minutes, which was twice as fast as the other one. So you could feel it. I mean, he and I are looking at each other. He hadn't taken any major dose in decades, and he just looks at me and he's like, wow, this is some powerful stuff. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, can you feel it? Yeah, oh my God. But we had already started manhandling the drug because we had done it a couple of years before. Now, what if you're lying down in your bed, and obviously when you're in your dream, you're not necessarily changing sides. You're not rolling around like I sleep on my side. And but my suspicion now is that maybe, here's the conflict. I'm stationary in bed. My dreams are constantly moving. They are. No matter if I'm still, something's moving. Could it be that the sensory input and kind of sort of chaotic electricity that I'm processing is affecting the fact that I can't hang on to something? Now, if we kick down to the soul, participating in this, because you're essentially freeing yourself up from your body. And again, this just recently occurred to me, and it's just a fun little analogy. Maybe it's literally true, maybe it's not. You've seen a human brain. It's a bunch of tubes. The brain in an octopus is a single tube, about the size of your pinky if it's a 50-foot squid, This could be the ethereal passage or the soul passage of your soul. So like a crazy straw, it's going through those tubes, and it's participating in the various quadrants of your brain that handle your hands and your memory. But I think your memory is not in your brain. I think it's way outside the game. Yes, you can pop a head open, touch on the brain, and it will give you memories and all kinds of stuff. If you start getting senile, a very common trait is old people remember events like it was just 2 seconds ago that happened potentially. Gosh, the one I knew was a 93-year-old woman who was having a dream of, or having a recall, I should say, of having went to San Francisco, California, which none of us knew she went there, and she had a margarita. And this woman was in Kansas, in my little hometown, for the majority of her entire life. She never got married. She stayed with her sister, which is how I know her, because her sister is a grandmother of a friend of mine. And we just thought that was fascinating, that she got this little dream back, or this sorry, I shouldn't say dream, her real event back, because someone then confirmed that she actually took a trip out there once. I will tell you this, if you ever have a relative do something like that, especially an event that you didn't know occurred, and they start waxing poetic about it, get in there and talk to them. Treat them as if the event just occurred and interview them. Well, what are you doing there? What did you do today in San Francisco? And get them to bring it all back, man. It's like a time capsule from the past, I understand why folks that have this randomly sprung on them don't do that, because it's such a bizarre, shocking thing that occurs, as fun as it is. But imagine we are, like I said, we are, in my opinion, we're ethereal beings. We have our molecular structure literally renewed at potentially 50 times the speed of light, because that's the speed of ether. And so even though we look at our cigar and it's right there and it's not changing, it's actually being renewed like a collection of forces that hold it all together. We can't sense ether easily because we don't choose to believe it exists anymore because of an idiot named Einstein who never invented anything in this entire world. And not even the photoelectric effect he was thrown on with the Nobel Prize. Some other dudes made it and stuck him on there so they could get the prize and get the money. He was all about money, so that's his thing. If you go back to Tesla or anyone before him, this stuff exists. They're the smarter group of people with hundreds of patents and hundreds of inventions we use every day to make this show possible. And this is where this happens. So if we are at a subatomic level constantly being renewed, the milliamps that we use to survive on a daily basis, even when you're dreaming, as I always say, why do we dream? Why do we go to sleep every single day? I mean, irrespective of drugs that might keep you up for days and days. If you're healthy, why do you have to go to sleep every day? If you didn't do much today, you didn't exert yourself, you just chose to stay in bed all day. You didn't even use your body, and let's just say you didn't play a video game, you didn't watch any complex shows on Netflix, you didn't use your brain either. Can't you skip a day of sleep? I mean, what is your body healing from? Just having your eyes open? Because that's about the only thing that's happening. Maybe you get dry eyes. That happens when you stay up really late, your eyes start watering. But let's just say you stay in bed and you keep your eyes closed for the most of the time, but you're just literally conducting a mental experiment. You'll still have that biofeedback rhythm that is telling you it's time to go to bed. Like your body's on a chemical cycle. Even when you're asleep, though, well, how functional is your body when you're asleep? Does your heart stop pumping? No. Everything keeps going. There's not a single part of your body when you're asleep where your arteries aren't throwing cells around. It's constant. So if you think of your body as a constantly moving architecture, both at the macro level and the micro level, but your dreams are potentially either in this consciousness cloud that is, we call the mind, between the body and the soul. But if you don't have, if it takes two things to make your consciousness, then you look at the body and you're like, well, it's never slowing down. The electrical circuits are constantly firing. Look over here at your soul and you're like, well, there's a good reason why it would be in a cycle of some sort. It's a living thing. Living things have cycles. Why do we think rocks aren't alive, but plants are? Because plants are cycling all their innards, photosynthesizing, absorbing nutrients from the ground, going through its budding process, let's just say, all the Fibonacci pattern dictation. Your Fibonacci pattern's in all things because it is a plant is basically a construct, a direct construct of ethereal winds. So I look down at a succulent plant, some cactus or something, and the thorns on the stalk of a flower, those thorns are coming out in a perfect spiral all the way down. Why does anything have a thorn? Why does it have a petal? Because that is where the ether has found a weak spot in the crystallization of the stem or the end of a stem, which might be creating, again, another three-dimensional beautiful thing, because even the bottom of a bud that's about to turn into a rose, it's all configured in there in a Fibonacci pattern. The only thing you haven't seen is it blasting out the ethereal winds, turning into these individual petals that then do their thing until they get so exhausted of being that they wither away. That's why everything has a life cycle. So it would be safe to assume, I think, that if we have a soul, which I'm pretty damn convinced we do, and again, not religious, just your intelligence cloud in the universe made of something that is not detectable by machines, therefore scientists poo-poo it away because Scientists want you to believe they know everything. It's a strange thing. And just to digress on that little mechanism for a split second, because I think it's important to understand the psychology of your average scientist. There had to have been a point in time where society was starting to crumble due to consciousness levels increasing, and therefore, the word we love to use is enlightenment, which means to see more. So society is seeing more on a minute-by-minute basis. They're freaked out about stuff. And so, wise old men, wise old women in equal proportions are solving different aspects of reality for us, right? There's old wives' tales, that's the female sort of cliche for old-time wisdom coming out of females, and males had their, I don't know what you call it, some old anecdote, tale, whatever. But they're probably looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, man, don't worry. I mean, let's say I'm an 80-year-old guy, and I'm in Egypt or Greece or someplace, probably more like Babylonia, Mesopotamia, that kind of place where it's very primitive still in some aspects. And we've lived through all these eras where young people are suddenly starting to panic about something. And we're like, well, that's weird. I see what you're seeing, and I see that you have a curiosity, but you're also translating that curiosity into fear. And so, I have to convince you that it's not something that you need to fear. Now, probably in a lot of cases in the earlier days, these were really empirical pieces of truth that were given to the youth to calm them down. Say, hey, look at this. This is shit. This is shinola. Don't worry about it, right? And they calmed the population down, thus returning it back to its productive iterations and cycles to exist. As we have progressed, those questions and the enlightenment to ask more complex questions, and then to have these weird imploding moments of consciousness where you're saying, oh my God, where did we come from? How old's the universe? I looked up at the sky today and I realized it doesn't have a wall, for the folks that believe that. And I need you to solve this problem for me. So in come these folks to go, hey, check this out. You know what? I got this theory. It's all bullshit. But it's very easy to understand, so people are going to believe it, and we can milk them for some serious research funds, grants, and what have you. Because in the end, it's going to return order to society where these new nervous points have swelled. What I've been trying to ask myself recently is, have we ever been enlightened as a result of a dream? And, there are so many categories of that. One of them could be simply you're trying to solve a problem in the real world, so you dream the solution in your dream. That makes sense. Your brain's still going on that problem. You went to bed before you could finish that. You're exhausted. You can't keep your eyes open any longer. And so there's that issue. The other one is to have one of these big epiphanies. And I don't know that I've ever had this happen to me. Nothing comes to mind whatsoever. And I think if this were to occur, I would remember. I mean, the only thing that I have ever had, which I said this story a long time ago, was that there was a dream I was having where I was playing a stand-up arcade game. It's probably about 1985 in the dream. And my parents came in and said, let's go, we got to go. And so I'm in the middle of a game. And so in the middle of this game, I took a RAM card, which doesn't exist, and I put it in the machine's base, and I pushed a button, and it downloaded the game into my RAM card, and I took it with me to go wherever the hell I was going. In fact, I think I woke up right after that moment, and I thought to myself, oh my God. And this was already being done in the real world, but I was in the middle of Kansas. I had no idea that anybody was doing this, but I was pretty sure this is where things were going to go. And I said, geez, why are we making any moving objects for sound devices? A spinning record, an 8-track, a cassette, a CD player. Why is anything moving? Why can't we just put it on RAM? Now, the obvious answer is RAM cost a tremendous amount of money. They hadn't figured out how to stack electrons that densely in memory, so that was why. But we ended up, 2001, I think the iPod was debuted, I think somewhere in there. So it took about 16 years to have a device that was exactly that. Arcade games sadly died off. By the way, if you're a big fan of arcade games, I have an episode called Arcade Games. So if you ever want to know what it was like to be in the late 70s all the way up through probably into the 90s, and just what it was like to be a kid in that era and walk into those amazing arcades. I mean, it's the saddest loss for humanity because we all still like games, and we still like casual games, right? We're playing them on our telephones by ourselves instead of in these beautiful dark dungeons of tons of sounds and amazing stuff. So I recreate that in an episode. So just go to deepthoughtsradio.com and type in arcade in the search field and you'll find it. And I think you'll enjoy it if that appeals to you whatsoever. But the thing I came up with in the Ancient Mind episode, which you guys liked way more than I ever thought you were going to like, I'm so impressed. I'm so happy that we're on the same wavelength, was that, our dreams are obviously, and this is no huge surprise, they are facsimiling this reality. And again, I've had a handful of dreams that were very esoteric and strange. And, I've got a whole category of dreams that are frustration dreams where, again, I'm like either an atom or I am a cell in a body. And it's just really strange. You have you have a purpose, I guess, but you can't figure out what it is. You can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. You're stuck. And it's just so frustrating. I haven't had that dream in years, but I used to have that one as a young kid. I didn't realize that in order to break a frustration dream, if you have this happen to you, and you're probably wise enough to figure this out for yourself, but if you have any dream that's messing with you, whether it be very literal, like this world, or something really esoteric, just get up. If nothing else, if you got a spouse or something and you don't want to freak out the kids or whatever, just grab your phone, lean over to the side of the bed where your phone won't bother, turn the sound down, and just go do something completely different. Read your favorite poetry or whatever it is, man. Just get yourself away from the algorithm that you're thinking. For boys, I know that when we play video games for an extended period of time, a mechanic of that game will be in your dream overlaid on top of something that you're doing. So like you can build a city in a game, right? And you're building and you're laying down buildings and zoning things or whatever the hell you're doing, tower defense game or something. And then somehow your last, 72 hours of life gets overlaid with this mechanism. And it's just bizarre. It'd be like your living room is a game or something. It's just really strange. What I find fascinating about these conversations about dreams, the way we do it and the way we discuss it in comments, is that I haven't done a deep dive on dream labs in the last 10 years, let's just say. But there's times in my life when I really got into it. And, they will find out interesting things, but the weird thing about dream labs, as I've had them documented, is they're never going for any of the fun stuff that we're talking about. Trying to figure out what is actually in a dream, what is not in a dream, and what motivates a dream. They're trying to, there's some papers that say they're able to actually view your dream, which would demand that your dream is actually projecting the facsimile on your visual cortex, and they're reading the layers of your visual cortex in some dot matrix so that you can see your dreams. I will not believe that that's possible until I see it, because I just don't believe that your mind is synthesizing things to your visual cortex such that you can see them in your mind's eye necessarily. Maybe that's occurring. Maybe it's not. They're trying to figure out a way to see your memories as well while you're awake. And I just read a paper probably last year where someone saying, man, they really have some foggy images that definitely look like real things, and those real things are not in front of the person who's having those memories. They'll put them in dark rooms or something and hook them up to a bunch of electrodes. But considering we only use about 10% of our visual cortex due to our genetic hobbling by whoever designed us, you can't access 90% of your visual cortex, according to this anthropologist who's an expert in it. And it's a protein blocker that has been installed to limit the, how do you say this, the scanning of memory in your visual cortex. So you got a bunch of cells that are all stacked up to create this matrix, just like a CCD in your camera that you take a picture with. And when we go for it, there's a blocker that says you can't go any further than this. The circuit will end. It's like a terminator back in the day when you used to wire a bunch of electronics together. You had to have this little terminator at the end to stop the signal and make it bounce back the other direction. Luckily, that's been fixed natively in all hardware. So imagine that other 90% is used for more esoteric purposes, such as dreams. It wouldn't really matter in our analysis. It'd be fun to know, but it wouldn't really matter. I would love to hear someone else other than this gentleman I listened to this, probably 3-hour lecture. And his big thing was, it's going to sound crazy, but he was looking for the missing link. He was trying to determine whether or not Bigfoot could be real. And he was presenting it kind of with no bias. He was saying there are definitely things that make us think that there might be these big creatures in the forest, but then again, they never do the due diligence that we did in our, I don't know, it was episode 200 or 300, where I think we absolutely obliterated the theory that these things could exist unless they are truly magical beings, you know. So yeah, I don't think I've had any major epiphanies, so please share some if you've had some. We need to know that these things are possible because this is the new frontier, isn't it? If someone was in Europe and said, man, I'm going to sail across the Atlantic Ocean and get to this other continent, which I think is going to be India, and then you find the Americas, and it's a brand new continent with a whole other civilization there, and the civilization already balkanized themselves into tribes. Imagine that we hadn't gone over and been mean and strange and unintelligent about the whole thing. I mean, no one will really know what we treated them like, but the stories are pretty bad, especially the eventuality, of course. I think we obviously missed out on who these folks really were, because by the time they started telling us stories with all my research, I still own a ton of my books I got from Stanford on this. They didn't trust the white man, and so they were just making up stuff, trying to disinfo the white man from saying, hey, if we tell you something about us, you're going to use it against us, so screw you. Here's a dream catcher, which apparently is not a real thing. And just to clarify that too, because I had a guy who sells Native American art. He's a acquaintance of mine, I should say, but he was a pretty OG dude, man. Very wealthy guy. Brilliant in completely different ways and probably fairly nefarious in other ways. But he goes, I sell these dream catchers to all these people, and he goes, they're not real. That's not what they are supposed to be. He goes, this design has been created for years, but it has nothing to do with catching your dreams. But that's what happens when you persecute a whole population and then ask them to tell you a story. So we missed out. We screwed up, and we screwed up in major ways. And this has been going on all over the planet, of course. It's just we had printing presses to record this particular one, so it's one that we all regret deeply, But the other question I have is, I've asserted several different theories about why dreams even exist, because, it's like, there's probably two ways to look at it, obviously. There's the evolutionary, there's no God theory of what you would have to do to explain why man has evolved to have dreams. All the excuses of why we sleep are just guesses, and I respect that. You're filing away your memories is one of the funniest ones I've ever heard. It's like, oh, really? How'd you prove that? It's a neat theory, and maybe you're right, but how'd you prove it to yourself that you're saying this to me like it's definitely that way? Again, science BS to calm society that needs to go back to work, essentially, right? Needs to go back to life, at least. On a celestial level, if we have souls and there's a heaven and there's a giant ecosystem that we're unaware of because we can't sense it directly, then we have to use all of our indirect experiences that are paranormal and just straight up observations of the meticulous second-to-second things that happen in our life to deduce what that other world might be. I do think that, I don't know if this is in the Bible or what have you, some of you Bible experts, maybe you can help me out with this one. But somewhere, some point in my life, someone told me a beautiful little saying, and it pretty much went like this. You are born with all of the truth that you need. That could mean two different things, and both of them could be true. The truth is either in you, which is sort of what I think, but I think it's a mechanism, or the truth is around you. And if you get really existential about truth, well, then we are all truth because we exist. Existence is truth. It is what is, what is what is true, and regardless if it hurts your feelings or not, it's still true, as many wise people have said over the years. Now, let's say you're a conscious and you're trying to deduce an answer to something. I think that you get answers back from the universe to the degree you build a good database query, and I've said this in previous episodes. But now, what if you were, some of you aren't technical, but I think you'll get this. But for those of you who are coders, or you've been a coder in your lifetime, this will make a lot of sense to you. We have a very popular database species out there in the world called SQL. And it was designed to be easy for any human being to write a query into a database without being a computer engineer. And in basic cases, they're absolutely right. And very quickly, like the rules of chess, you can get into super complex, mind-blowing queries. But here's the thing. All that matters is this. I'll give you a kind of a paraphrase of a query. Let's say you had a database of animals that are in your shelter. Ooh, here comes a car. So you have a database of all these animals in your shelter. They're all checked in and put in this database. Their species, their weight, their age, just everything you could possibly put into this database. And you want to know what the average age is of all of the animals that you have. Because that's going to tell you perhaps your adoption rate, because people typically shy away from older animals for younger animals to get more life out of them, right? Less medical problems and that kind of stuff. But you write a query that's all about weight and color. Select all dogs where color equals red, or age, or not even age, weight equals over, because you might be able to deduce age from weight or something, but it's not true. But anyway, over 50 pounds or something like that. You're obviously going to get back the wrong results because you're looking for an age average. You need to select all dogs, select star from dogs, and put an average equation in your where clause to figure out, total it all up, baby, and let me know the average age. You get back the query in 2 seconds. This is an analogy for the way that we as human beings sit down and solve problems. There's that scene I always mention. It's in Indiana Jones 3, where Sean Connery and Harrison Ford are stuck in a big tower. Nazis are coming up the tower. It's like a rook tower in some castle. And they can't get out. And they're pinned at the top of the rook tower. And Sean Connery says, well, what I find is if I just sit down and relax, the solution presents itself. Something like that. And he sits down in a chair, and the chair is rigged to trigger a staircase that goes down. It's a silly scene, but it is the truth. That wisdom. Now, this was a mechanical solution to the problem in the movie, but it is really true that if you sit down and start to digest all of the data you have around the thing you're trying to solve, what I think you're doing, because if you just think about your brain going out your pineal gland, which is why you have to keep that thing very healthy, out through your soul, out to the universe, who has all of the truth in the big database up there, you're essentially using your mind to construct a query to send through your soul to the universe to get that information back. Have you ever wondered why some people are so much more successful than other people? But when you sit them down and start talking to them, they seem like average people. They don't have an extended vocabulary on certain things that they're not interested in trying to solve problems with. They're complete neophytes. They don't know anything. And they may even believe like blue pill stuff because that's just, that's what makes them comfortable. However, when they think about problems that are either whatever problem they're trying to think of, a construction problem, a surgery problem, a computer problem, whatever it is, they have, because of their experience, more data cloud information to sift through and create a better query. So when they ask the universe a question, they ask a very specific question, which can only return, if there's an answer at all, the truth. And boom, here it comes. One of my theories about dreams, sort of relating to this strenuous day-to-day thing to exist, when you wake up, it doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are, you're going through your life loops, and no matter how much you've done them before, sometimes loops are frustrating sometimes, and I'll give you some examples. Your bathroom ritual, brushing your teeth, flossing. As you get older, that's why a lot of teeth get bad in people, because they just get tired. They're like, I have brushed my teeth 20,000 times and I just don't want to do it anymore. So they start skipping days, not realizing, well, did you eat sugar tonight? Because you might have a whole mouthful of stuff that's going to eat your teeth. Maybe just at least correlate it with your eating habits. How many of you love filling up your car with gas? Now, let's just say you're a millionaire and the money thing is not a big issue. Well, it's not much for us, and it's going up like crazy recently here. It's not even summertime. It's almost at $6 here in LA. But you're doing stuff with your life, and you're like, God, I got to go fill up my car and find that station I like, and whatever. And you got to find a gas station. You're in some foreign town. You don't even know where any are. And it's just bizarre. Sometimes you drive in towns and let me know if you've ever experienced this. You drive into a town, like I went to Joshua Tree last year, and there was a point we needed food, and we're trying to find the restaurant circuit in the town. And, it was right when this whole masking thing came about, and so most of the places were closed, so it has to all be drive-through, and we're trying to find the drive-through thing, and it just took us like half an hour to find it. But I've been in the Bay Area where I couldn't find a gas station. I mean, you get into pockets. It's just strange. But anyway, this day-to-day churn is taxing on your system, isn't it? And so in a dream, you don't have to do it anymore. There's no more bills. There's no more taxes. Your body is not hurting at any point in time. Let me know if you've ever just been in ambient pain in a dream. I've never been in ambient pain in a dream. I might be scared when I was younger. Something's chasing me or something like that. Now, that's fear. That's an emotional pool thing. But it's sort of a stress-free place, isn't it? If your dream gets infected with stress, then you're going to have a stress dream, and then you get up and do something. Watch some funny videos on YouTube. Watch half an hour of your, daily dose of internet, and then, man, that will just soothe your soul, trust me. That's to unwind your mind. So perhaps sleep, as relates to dreams, is just that oasis you can go to where, hey man, it's all okay, And I assume that outside of a material body, that's the world we're in. That is a heaven. Remember that place that no one can describe? Again, if you want to have a fun conversation at some dinner with people, if the conversation's kind of getting dry or something and you want to spark it up with some interesting things, don't let it get too religious or anything, but just say, blame it on me. Just go, watching this guy on YouTube, and he said, ask 2 questions. 1, do you believe in a heaven of any kind? And if anybody says yes, which a lot of people do, probably the majority of society does, regardless of what their definition is or what their thought process is about it. We like that idea that, man, there's no pain after this one, But then say, okay, define it. what is heaven? I mean, tell me, what do you think it is? Physically, are you going to be human? Are you going to be a soul? Is there gates? What is it, pearly gates, as I always say? Is someone going to be looking at you in a book? Now, that's a more religious thing, but I've asked people this, and I just see deer eyes, and it's so fun because you see them make an expression on their face that says, no one has ever asked me that question before. Now, pull in the second question and say, okay, what do you think dreams are? I mean, what do you think they are? Why do you have them? And that's kind of depressing if half the people at the table go, well, I don't dream at all. Like, you're an NPC. But chances are, if we were to assemble, say, 1,000 to 10,000 humans who claim they do dream, and give them a piece of paper or whatever, and say, okay, don't quarantine everybody away from each other so they can't steal each other's answers. But just say, hey, look, write down what you think a dream is. I'm willing to bet one or two people out of a big group would come up with a brand new explanation that we have never conceived of that would boil the whole thing down. For whatever reason, they simply just summed it up perfectly. Would love to hear a bunch of different answers on that without someone trying to quote someone else's research, right? But now let's take dreams and just come at it from this perspective. If you believe in creationism, which is something from something, then we are most likely divinely created by something. If you want to say it's evolution, which is the paradox of something from nothing, then whatever. It's kind of the same mechanic, even though there's no explanation for how it began. We would have dreams designed as a reality for us. Even though we know we're all snowflakes as human beings and that all of our dreams are profoundly different in their mechanism. And there's been shows on TV that recreate people's dreams either to get them through an anxiety or something like that. And, people will, in Hollywood, every once in a while, will create a dream sequence. And, oh, my God, they're starting to get it, man. I mean, they're starting to realize lighting, flow. So I think there is a pretty damn unified experience that we're having when we have it, even though the subject matter varies quite a bit. But if we were to apply the discipline to dreams that we apply to our DNA, for instance, it's a fascinating concept. Let's just say that the paradigm of dreaming, it's very borders of functionality, meaning let's just say we could figure out something that never happens in a dream and something that most often happens in dreams. Then we start seeing the bits and pieces of the design. You wouldn't be surprised if you got in a car and there wasn't a refrigerator in the car. Wouldn't surprise you. It's not designed to do that. It's an A to B vehicle. Some with obviously much more luxurious experiences in between. But still, it's got a function, and designers designed it. We're most obviously a creature that has, through whatever process, ended up as who we are today, of course. Our abilities. You talk about insects. Insects can hold, hundreds of times their own weight. Well, we would have to change substantially to do that with our own weight mass. And of course, there's some Norwegian guys that seem to get pretty close to lifting at least 10 times their weight. But 100 times? That's amazing. There's a need for that, which is why that insect can do that. To pull back a bug they found that's 100 times bigger than them. That's huge, right? An ant bringing back a cicada. I mean, that's just like me dragging a building. Hey guys, yeah, I found a building. You want some? But with dreams, well, what would be some of the constraints that would be in the conversation about dreams? One of the dreams I had that actually had a bit of stationary walking. I stopped walking in the dream and I told this story a long time ago. I went into a room where there were all these tables And they were like cylinders all the way to the ground. No kick plate or anything at the bottom. I mean, no place where there was no feature to the tables at all. And it was all these nerds in white lab jackets. And some guys were like drafting buildings, and some guys were like doing weird things with weird like slide ruler looking things. Not quite, but different. It was celestial. It was strange. And immediately in this room, I got the sense that this was where dreams were made. And that I had walked in a room that I wasn't supposed to walk into. The funny thing was, they were happy to see me. And they were hazing a new employee. That was the funny thing. There was a kid who was trying to figure something out. And I kind of walked in the room right when the hazing punchline was about to occur, where they were going to let the kid know that he screwed something up. But it was all in fun. Everyone was being really nice to everyone. And they just knew he kind of got it over his head. So I remember him holding some paper and some plastic and stuff. And he looks at me, got a little chubby little guy, young kid. And he looks at me and he's got glasses on and he's just got this big smile on his face. The whole room was laughing at whatever it was. And he was excited to be there. And it was good. And so I remember asking them, what is this place? And through whatever means of communication, I don't remember someone may have said this on point, but they were kind of like, this is where your dreams are made, man. And I said, well, let me look around. And they said, sure, go ahead, look around. And I walked past all these tables with these guys, and there was a back area of this room with tons of tables with little tiny cylinders that looked like the table shape, but just, like a coffee mug size thing all over all these tables, just these little cylinders, and they're just solid. I couldn't figure that out. And that's when the dream lapsed out, because I got so excited. I got to this room. My brain threw me out of the dream. It's always the way it is, right? But dreams definitely serve a function. What surprises me is hearing people that don't dream. One of my closest friends, when she dreams, she remembers it and she calls me up and she's, oh man, I had this dream and da-da-da-da. I'm like, awesome. But she'll say most of the time I don't dream. But now the interesting difference between the two of us is that she falls asleep instantaneously. I mean, her head hits a pillow, boom, she's out. And I roll around and roll around. But as she has nights where she'll call me up and say, man, I can't sleep. And I'm just like, okay, let me talk you right to sleep. Boy, she'll fall asleep on the phone. It's absolutely hilarious. Which, by the way, with cell phones, for those of you who are old enough to remember life before cell phones, if you ever fell asleep on the phone with somebody back in the day, they squawk the phone. If people forget this ever happened, they just go, bop, 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 and you'd wake up and like, oh my God, and you put the phone down. Because you could have an emergency phone call coming in. And you'd be at a house with, say, 4 phones. And it was funny. You'd pick up the phone to make a phone call, and it's squawking on the one that was already hung up because there's some phone in the house that's off the hook. I just think it's funny that I'm old enough now where I've got those memories embedded in my mind and my history, and nobody remembers. The other big one was a bunch of you just said this comment. Probably 3 of you said this comment the other day. I don't know what triggered it, but I think I was asking you guys how many channels you had in your respective countries, and many of you said, man, we only had 3 or 4 channels, same in America. About 1980, you could get HBO, very quick after that, everything blew up. But television used to stop between 10 and midnight, depending on what channel you're watching, and that's the movie Poltergeist in 1982, where the little girl would wait up until the television went off, and they do the national anthem, and then it would go to static. And so if you left the TV on back in the day, you'd wake up and your TV's just making that horrible white noise. Just, and you'd go, oh God, I gotta turn the TV off, But let's just review real quick before we end the episode. Let me know what you think. Mine are most definitely predominantly an emotional experience. I don't really know the percentage. I would say at a minimum it's 60% emotional. It might even be 80% emotional. I don't know. I don't know how you quantify percentages in this realm, but I just know for a fact that without my body being preoccupied with its touch, sense, For the most part, not a smell sense, although I did have a smell one the other day. I forgot what the hell it was. And my friend, she came up to me and said she had a dream. And I had a smell one recently, and I can't remember what it was, but the dream before that where I reported smell was I was at like a vineyard. And there were some berries or something growing on a vine structure thing, but it wasn't necessarily grapes. I don't know. It seemed like it was more plummish. And I remember smelling that, but most of these senses are off. So everything's going to this more cerebral visual input. It's extremely visual, isn't it? Audio for sure, because you're talking to people. But sometimes I even wonder, am I really hearing anyone in a dream, or am I just ESPing or having telepathy, I should say, with them? I don't know if I would know the difference. What has never happened in a dream is two things with sound. I've never, ever, ever had to say, "What'd you say?" No one's ever spoke so softly that I couldn't hear them. The other thing that's never happened, I don't think, in a dream is a really loud noise where I'm like shocked, I do have a weird thing that happens once a quarter, maybe twice a quarter of a year, where I'll be in Twilight Zone, going to bed, and then I will hear like a gunshot, a firework, something that's just a big bang. And it has no context. It just goes bang, and I'll jump in bed. It's just a really weird thing, but that's never while I'm asleep. So think about those limitations. If we're drawing it on a whiteboard, having a brainstorming session about what dreams are, we're kind of saying, we'll say we have 10 chronic dreamers in the room or more, and we go, okay, guys, do you have this happen? And if it's a point where like out of 10 people, 9 people going, no, I never have that, but one person's going, definitely, I've had that experience. So you write in a kind of a secondary column to say, okay, this is possible, apparently, but the majority of people don't have that particular experience. And maybe we can drag out of the person when they had this exceptional experience what was going on in your dream, and perhaps find the triggers for what's causing this to occur. But okay, let me give you some simple things that if man would truly get enlightened and put this kind of stuff inside a Deep Thoughts University, we might want to, like, people don't sit around and compare dreams. Dreams is the weirdest thing we don't talk about. I mean, it's almost like, it's like you don't sit in public and talk about what porn you watch or something, right? It's got that weird taboo to it, and it doesn't have any taboo to it. It's just a dream. What's the big deal? But we almost forget we have dreams until we hop in bed at night. We're like, oh yeah, I'm going to have a dream tonight. It's going to be cool. And then we get out of bed in the morning, and for the first 10 minutes while we're showering or whatever, we're like, oh, that was a cool dream, man. That was really awesome. I saw grandma last night or whatever it was. But after that, it's like it doesn't happen until you get right back in the context where dreams occur. Why not create a situation where a bunch of human beings continually dialogue about dreams, and not necessarily just to entertain each other? That's good. But let's just say someone's telling a dream. I did it several times in this episode. One could listen to those stories almost like a dream psychologist and go, okay, I'm not going to interrupt you. You talk about your dreams start to finish, as detailed as you can remember. And what I'm going to do is not the Freudian thing to try to figure out how much you hate your mother or hate your father and want to make love to your mother. I'm going to write down the thresholds of your experiences. I might ask you a question. Well, when you grab that object, did you feel it, or did you just grab it? You might go, oh, I don't remember. Well, that means you probably didn't feel it. You're not sure, and you're being honest with me, but we're just going to go ahead and write a barrier to that. But what if you did 1 million people, 1 million different dreams? I'm willing to bet there's data that will reveal itself such that we can get at least a paradigm schematic of what dreams are. My episode about does space exist? And I'm sure a bunch of you haven't heard that episode, and I get lectured by people all the time. Space doesn't exist, you're stupid, if I talk about anything related to space. As far as my knowledge, if you look back at Deep Thoughts Season 1, which is on a separate channel now, because it's been remastered. Go to deepthoughtsradio.com and click on that channel and you'll see it. But just search on the website and you'll find everything. But the way that I figured out this question was to say, I never dream of being in space. This is still a paradox in my brain. But I thought of this idea while I was doing my other show with my buddy, who is a space special effects super expert, double Emmy for his work on space fights in space. He has worked, he just finished Top Gun, but he's been working on Star Trek since the 90s. He got hired by the Babylon 5 guy when he first got his first break. He has been doing space for 2.5 decades. His buddies have been in the industry at least as long as him, if not longer. So I asked him, I said, have you ever dreamed of being in space? And he goes, what do you mean? So, well, it's just as simple as the question, man. Do you ever see, you worked on Star Trek for God knows, almost 10 years. I said, did you ever dream about being in the Enterprise? Now, one person in the comments of this entire show said that they had that dream, but then he said he was on a bunch of cough syrup, which I think is hilarious. Thank you for sharing that if you're still listening. In fact, if you're still listening, let me know. I think that'd be great. So he looks at me on this porch in the middle of summer and he goes, no. I never have. And I just see him looking at his world, and he's like, how's that possible? How's it possible that I'm in it all day? All day. And he has 14-hour days working in these special effects places. So he goes to work. He gets in the room with all the other dudes. He goes, hey, anybody, I got a question for you. Have any one of you dreamed of being in space? We work in this industry all day long. Everybody looked at each other and went, no. And they all got their brains blown, So the only thing I can think of, it's the only thing I think of. Now, I've dreamed of being in different parts of the world, but I will say, as much as I've talked about it, pyramids, I never dreamed of being at the pyramids. I've seen major cities all over the world in plenty of movies and stuff. I do not dream of things that aren't directly in my area of influence. It's not quite absolute because I do dream of skyscrapers and things I've never been in. I've never been at the Eiffel Tower in a dream, Big Ben in a dream, the Taj Mahal in a dream. I know these places exist. I don't think I've ever been to Australia in a dream. I've been to Australia. No, I don't dream about it. Even in Australia, I didn't dream about it, So it's almost like it's a subject limiter in the dreams. Now, I've got a whole nother episode that's like the threshold of intelligence, which is there are certain subject matters that when humans think about it, there seems to be almost this phantom force saying, don't think about that. Might have a relation, don't know. The places I dream don't really exist. Again, there's a couple times I dream about my hometown. People in my dreams will exist. But then they're really not who they are in this world. They say things and do things they would never do in this world. So they're bad facsimiles of humans. And I'm actually very glad because that would get really confusing, wouldn't it? If your parents act like exactly like they act in real life in your dream. And that's not that they won't say a word that they've said before or a sentence they've said before to you to kick off the dream, but overall, they're pretty unique beings that just happen to look like people. And have you ever had a situation where, in addition to everything else I've said in this episode, where people transform? You're talking to somebody. You're even maybe by yourself with this other person. And for one part of the dream, their gender in my brain doesn't change. But so if they're a woman, they're a woman. If they're a guy, they're a guy. But it might be my girlfriend at the time. But then it turns into some other girl, and then some other girl, and then an old lady. It just changes. It flows. And I don't seem to recognize that this has occurred, except when I have the exceptional dream where I feel like I've lost somebody. So that's strange. Again, I've never asked anybody their name. I don't remember ever having a one-on-one conversation with someone for any extended period of time. It's Usually I'm looking for the next location. Well, where did so-and-so go? Oh, they went over there. Oh, let's go over there. Okay, and by the time we get there, this person's somebody different, and then it's like they vanish off the face of the planet. It's totally cool. I'm losing people in my life, It's like a Twilight Zone, and I'm comfortable with it. It's really freaking bizarre. So I think that's about all I got with this one. I've just been amassing this, and when I come up with an interesting little tidbit, it's kind of a bummer because I do have this longer format. So I try to get several tidbits together before I kind of drop an episode on this whole thing. We haven't done much dream stuff this season, so it's about time we pushed out another one. Please share your experiences if you can, just so that, really just whatever's really bizarre, your gold mines of experiences and dreams. What I think is interesting is that we have dreams when we're young, and there'll be a dream that when you're young, like I've got dreams that I had when I was 9 years old. I remember my nightmares when I was a kid. I remember those because those are freaky and strange. But a gorilla, about 25 feet tall, broad daylight summer, stomping through my neighborhood, Derby, Kansas, destroying all the houses, and me running from it and looking back going, oh my God, I just seen the latest King Kong movie, I think. It was made in the 70s. I dreamed when I was 17, I had a baby. And in order to babysit this baby, I had to put it in this like shoebox thing that was going to feed it and take care of it. It was the weirdest thing. It's just so anti-baby, this whole concept. Wow, some Orwellian thing crawled into my dream. So any of those experiences you have where it might dictate some of the edges of what the dream paradigm could furnish for all of us, would love to hear those. Any of those extreme cases, but also think about your senses that you have when you're conscious, quote unquote. Who knows what we are? Touch. That's a real rare one in dreams for me personally. Smell. Very rare for me personally. Sound. What is the limitations of sound? Have you ever been I was just having a conversation about Iron Maiden the other day, and my memory of going to Iron Maiden in real life was that it was the loudest concert I've ever been to. I needed to bring earplugs just to bring it down to normal. My ears were ringing for days. Never happens in a dream. And I told you I had those popping noises when I'm in a Twilight Zone state of mind. What's interesting about that is that if I were to ever hear the report in my mind, this bang, in real life, I'd have ringing ears for at least a few minutes. Well, I never have ringing when it happens in that virtual realm, The only other one I'm going to throw in at the last second, this is sort of unrelated to necessarily dreams because this is before I lose consciousness. And I don't know, there's no way to make an episode about it, so I'll just throw it out there. It's going to sound nuts, but it's during my sleep, and I'm not really in Twilight Zone yet. I'm closing my eyes for the first time to attempt to go to sleep. I have this strange thing, and I don't know if it's my visual cortex doing something weird with chemicals. But for any of you who have felt like, how do I say this? You've had dream paralysis where you wake up and you can't move. And I've told you this a couple of times. I've had this feeling, I haven't had this happen in a while, and I'm actually excited to have it happen again because I know it will, where I feel like there's a being over me watching me. I initially interpreted it as a threatening thing, and then I finally realized no one's ever hurt me in this state. And when I talk to people who say they've been alien abducted, my first account interviews with these people way back in the day, they said this was happening to them, and it's the precursor to being taken somewhere. But this is me waking up in the morning, not in the middle of the night. Most of the time, I remember it's always bright. But I will close my eyes, and I have a feeling, I have this visual information that up in my upper left-hand corner, like just behind my peripheral vision, there's a light on in the room. So here I'm in blackness of my bedroom. I close my eyes, and there's a light behind me. I don't necessarily get the feeling that anyone's there when this occurs. It's just a really strange thing. It would be if you were to take, someone were to say, can you see my hand now? Can you see my hand? Because you have about a 220-degree view out of your eyeballs. And you can only see 3D in the front because you have both eyes contributing to the image. But once you go to your peripheral, it's absolutely 2D. And your frame rate, again, on your peripherals, about twice the frame rate you have in front of your face. Fun experiment I've said a couple times. If you got a ceiling fan, turn it on, look straight at the blades, it's blurry. Now look to the right or left where you put the blades in your peripheral and you'll see them spin smooth as glass. It's a mind-blowing experiment. So I don't know what would be going on there. I don't know if something is stimulating my visual cortex in a chemical way. I don't know if it's, it doesn't appear to change if I move my head. I don't get closer to it if I look more to my left. It's just there. But it will happen, once a week at least. It's just a funny little weird thing. So if anybody if any of you know why that occurs, throw it at me. But anyway, if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, that's where you can find all the other episodes. And again, if you dig any episode, I guarantee you there's a dozen up there, if not 100 up there that you'll really enjoy. Just use the category list, use the search field, and get yourself more of what you like. But on the website, video, audio, social media, all new Remastered Season 1, a store, and a couple ways to donate to the page for those of you who do through Patreon and PayPal. Thank you so much. I'm going to be putting together a Patreon exclusive video for you guys. I just recorded it last night, which you will have before this airs. And it's going to be unedited. You're going to be able to see all the pauses and drags and me thinking. And I'm going to take you through a little tour of the backyard here. And we tried to film the possum, but it didn't come out right. It's too dark. Anyway, take care of yourself, someone else. Go have some dreams, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts episode. Over and out.